Call the order of the January 27th, 2014 meeting of Dearborn Public School. I apologize for starting off about 8 minutes late. We had a committee meeting just before this meeting. Go to roll call, please.
President Barry.
Here.
Trustee Guido.
Here.
Trustee Lane.
Here.
Trustee McDonald is absent. Trustee Shellis here. Trustee Schoolmaster.
Here.
And Trustee Adams.
Here.
Next item, please.
Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, Miss Amy Modica. I probably botched that, I'm sorry. Principal of McDonald Elementary School will introduce students who will lead in the Pledge of Allegiance. We're getting an echo.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Miss Amy Violet Modica, and I have brought Zara Bazzi and Mahmoud Saad from McDonald Elementary. They are third graders with us to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You guys could step forward.
Thank you, Zara.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Before we go into superintendent's update, unfortunately, second meeting in January, we're starting off with some sad news. City of Dearborn lost a son, great son. Gino Polidori passed away yesterday, a long battle with cancer. Gino served as fire chief for 23 years. After retiring, served the city of Dearborn as a councilman, and later on went on to serve as a state representative. Gino served Dearborn well. He served the veterans. He was a friend to education, a friend of the senior citizens in our city. Gino is just a true statesman. I remember Gino probably 35 years ago getting me involved in the community. I remember having the lasagna dinner at his house, the famous Mrs. Polidori's lasagna dinner. And right after, he took us to the Dearborn Goodfellas, where we helped pack the gifts for the kids. Gino survived by his wife, his two daughters, Laura and Rita, who are employees of the district, great teachers. Also Gino Jr., his son, his mother, Nadalina. And something about Gino, he's always a family man. I remember every Sunday when I get a chance to get Leo's Coney Island, he would be sitting there with his wife and his mother. Also survived by his two brothers, Tony and Ray. And I remember Tony, to me, he was always Mr. Polidori. He was my principal at Salina School, served in the district, and Ray was also a full-time faculty at the college. We also lost two employees this past week. Michael Fiola, survived by his father, John Fiola, who's an engineer at Dearborn High. We also lost Nancy Mazurchitz. Apologize for mispronouncing the name. She was a departmental physical therapist in our district. And we also lost a retired teacher, Thomas Weatherspoons, and I just heard I never got a chance to get to know Mr. Weatherspoons, but I just heard some great stories from Trustee Schoolmaster. And in memory of all those ones we've lost, I'd like to have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. I wanted to make another statement before we go into the superintendent's report. He's got something he wants to report, but I wanted to clear something. Teachers don't call snow days. I've been watching some of the logs in Dearborn where they're being very unfair to our teachers in Dearborn. Our teachers are highly motivated to come into the buildings and teach. There is a process that we go through. And the other thing, school board members don't call snow days. So and I know our families and our friends call us, trying to lobby us. We wait for the phone call. It's the superintendent, and I can tell you that we, with Brian's support here, have done a good job this year. When, there was days where people pushing for snow days and it wasn't necessary, but there were some days necessary. There is a process that we go through. And I know there are days where our superintendent is on the road 3:30 in the morning, checking the roads, make sure everything's taken care of before he makes his decision. Next item, please.
Superintendent's update, agenda items.
None of mine are on agenda items, but I do have on non-agenda items. The first is that
Non-agenda items.
we will be closed as a district tomorrow, Tuesday, the 28th, because of the weather being up to 30 degrees or more below zero. And I just wanted to quickly talk about the process that we use to look at closing buildings, whether we're closed or not. First of all, we track weather and weather reports. We get reports on the weather, and we're tracking that through a variety of sources. We certainly have staff that is on the road and the reports on road conditions. I also at times hear from city officials, including the mayor sometimes, on the road conditions and when they expect to have roads plowed or not plowed, and certainly talking to our staff about when they can or can't get our buildings plowed out and sidewalks cleared. We certainly have to take into consideration our buses. Diesel buses don't like 20 degrees below zero or 10 degrees below zero, so that's an issue. And we certainly, if we have school, want to make sure our buses are running as close to on time as possible. And during bad weather conditions, we know that our buses will run a little late, but we try to keep them on schedule. We certainly have communications with other school districts about what they're going to do. Superintendents have phone calls and an email system where we communicate with each other to find out information that we each have. I mean, generally we try to have school open, but we certainly want to keep our students safe and need to make decisions based on their safety. Historically, the district has not made calls until about 5 in the morning is usually, we go through a several-hour process leading up to that. But with the weather conditions the way they've been recently, we've been trying to call as soon as possible. And today was, for an example, people wanted us to make the call at noon, 2, 3, 4. We try to make the call in time for parents to make alternative plans, but we also try to make sure we have the most up-to-date and accurate information about school districts. And I know people want to compare school districts, but we each have different road condition problems. A lot of districts have dirt roads, which makes it even more difficult. So every district has different things that impact whether they're going to open or close. And so we go through quite a checklist of process to see whether our schools can be opened or not. And we thank our community's patience as we go through that process. We want to make the call as soon as possible, but we also want to make it, with the most up-to-date information as possible. And so I know we had we have a technology system where parents get robocalls, and accidentally on Saturday we had disabled it, but the system decided to make the calls 4 different calls anyway, so I know some calls went out on Saturday canceling school on Sunday. So I don't know if that was good news for our students or not, but it certainly did add some confusion, and we seriously apologize, for that confusion. It's not something we want. We want to have accurate, up-to-date information. David is our one that releases the information so that the public knows we have one trusted source to go to make sure when we close that it's coming from his office. So again, I thank the public. It's quite a process we go through, and we want to have as much accurate information on weather, traffic, roads, parking lots, sidewalks as we can get, and so that's the detailed process we go through. So no school tomorrow, Tuesday. Now, some schools are talking about what's going to happen on Wednesday. We won't know until Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday evening, because again, we're going to want the latest information to make sure that we have accurate information. This year, we have 6 snow days. We've used 3. Tomorrow will be number 4. If we go on beyond the number of 6, by law, we're supposed to make up the time. Now, the legislature can always decide, since this winter has been so drastically cold and so much snow, that they could waive that, but we don't know about that. That's right now, the law is if you go beyond 6 days, you have to make them up. And there are many districts beyond that process right now. So we'll keep the public informed on that as well. Because we're closed tomorrow night, our financial aid night scheduled for the Michael Berry Center is canceled, and we will reschedule that. Look for information, because the financial aid night's very important to our juniors and seniors as they're looking at going to college. And so we'd like to have those events, but because of the terrible temperatures, we are closing that for tomorrow. So a couple other things real quick.
Can I
Yep.
comment on something really
Yep.
quick, just so that we're not changing subjects?
Yep.
I think that our district does an incredible job of removing snow around our buildings, in front of our buildings, but I'm just hoping to implore neighborhood residents to also consider that when you decide not to shovel your sidewalk. I know in our particular neighborhood, my husband and my daughter have had to walk down the street with a shovel because kids in elementary school were literally having to go into the street to get around a corner because it was so bad. So I'm sure that these people probably aren't the ones watching tonight, but, we all need to think about that. If we have neighbors that can't maintain their own property, that if, other people can help in that the sidewalks not being cleared is a huge, has a huge effect, especially on our elementary schools. We have kids walking and putting themselves in dangerous situations because of ice and snow.
Very good point.
Right.
There. All right, so the governor held a State of the State address since our last board meeting, and he did talk about education very briefly in the State of the State. One, he talked about the support he has provided for schools through helping financially on the retirement side for school districts, and that's very true. The governor and the legislature has been very helpful in looking at our retirement cost and providing us some resources, and we thank them for that, and we encourage them to continue to look at ways to help us offset. Because for every dollar we spend in payroll, we have to spend a little over 24 cents or 24% to pay for retirement. So we do thank them for that. But in a sense, I wish that we could have an honest, open discussion on full disclosure, because it sounds like when he says he's given $660 million to schools that we all have been doing very well. Well, in Dearborn, don't forget, we lost our 20J, which amounts to $281 a pupil. Our foundation was cut $470 per pupil. Plus, we lost our at-risk, which is about $260 a pupil. That's over $1,000 per pupil that we have lost over the last 3 or 4 years because of the new economy in the state of Michigan. And if you multiply that out times the number of pupils, that's more than $20 million we have less to operate with. So while we deeply appreciate the support and help we've gotten on retirement, we have to have an honest conversation to say, but we're still been cut over $1,000 or $20 million less for us to operate on that issue. Governor also in the State of the State talked about expanding early childhood, which we do like that. We do know through brain research we want to get to kids at a young age, and we have upped the number of students that we are serving in our early childhood programs, and we would encourage that to continue. So the state has about $1 billion over a couple of years in a rainy day fund now, or in excess funds. We're certainly going to make the case that education, we should get some of that money to help us on retirement and the cuts that we've taken in our foundation and other categoricals that we've received. Lastly, some great news about Bridges Magazine. Put out a listing, a grading of all the school districts in the state of Michigan, and they say that Dearborn Schools is one of the 2013 academic all-state champs based on our test scores, and they rank us as the 14th best school district in the state. Everybody uses different ranking mechanisms to do this, but we certainly thank Bridges Magazine for recognizing the hard work of our teachers and our administrators, and most importantly, the results we're getting from students. So that's something to celebrate. And a couple of retirements tonight. Toby Hayes has almost 24 years of service to the district, is retiring, and Stephanie Longiski-Roy has almost 27 and a half years of service and will be retiring. So congratulations to those two staff members, and thank you for all the students they positively impacted over their careers.
Next item, please.
Citizen participation, citizens wishing to address the board on an agenda and non-agenda items for action who are signed in by 7:10 by submitting a blue card to the secretary may speak at this time. I have no blue cards.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Approval of minutes. Approval of the minutes of the following Dearborn Board of Education meetings. Annual reorganization meeting, January 13th, 2014, Board Report 1384. Regular P12 meeting, January 13th, 2014, Board Report 1385. Recommended action, make any necessary corrections and move for approval of these minutes.
So moved.
We have a motion and support. Any corrections? Trustee Lane, please.
On page 15, it mentions, I think it's under the board commentary section, that I inquired about the synergy savings, energy savings. What I was inquiring about was the behavioral changes. I know the program, I understand how it works. It's similar to the Johnson control system for saving energy and saving money. I'm all about that. I love that because energy saved is energy that we don't have to take out of the ground or elsewhere. So what my concern is that the behavioral changes, that's what I was inquiring about.
Correct. Yep.
What behavioral changes will be required from our staff and students? Will those be ones that we can realistically implement? Because we can tell everybody to freeze, but that's not going to work. So we have to have behavioral changes that are realistic. And the point is, I was inquiring about behavioral changes, not about the synergistic system. So.
Right.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer, for the correction.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? There's no objection. The motion will be adopted as amended. Next item, please.
Recognition and acknowledgements, commendations. I would like to welcome Fordson High School senior Chanel McCrimmon, who will be reading the commendations tonight.
Good evening. Fordson, with the Super Bowl only a few days away, here's a reason to cheer for the Seattle Seahawks. Fordson graduate Robert Saleh is a member of the Seahawks defensive coaching staff. He is responsible for assisting the defensive coordinator and working on and off the field with the development of the linebacking corps. Saleh is in the second session with Seattle after spending 6 years with the Houston Texans. Before making the move to the NFL, Saleh worked at the college level including a brief time at Central Michigan in 2004 and Michigan State in 2002 through 2003. Dearborn High. Congratulations to Dearborn High School football team for achieving the 6th highest GPA in the state out of 300 schools in their division. The team GPA was 3.93. Greer Park. Commendations to student at Greer Park who raised more than $1,600 for the Ronald McDonald House. The entire school participated in the fundraiser and had a great time being a part of the worthy cause. Oakman. On behalf of Oakman School, the district would like to thank Dearborn City Councilman David Bazzi for his generous donation of an oven to an Oakman family in need. Howe and Howard. Congratulations to Howe student Raina Berry and Howard student Mona Berry, Marion Berry, and Ali Slayman for their participation in the robot parade held on the main floor of the auto show. The 4 students take part in the program sponsored by the Lawrence Tech that develops interest in robotics through the use of Legos. Salina Intermediate School. Congratulations to the following students for their accommodations in the PTA Reflections event. 8th grader Khadija Al-Karazi, first place in the state in visual arts. 8th grader Shema El-Shami, second place in the state in visual arts. 7th grader Hassana Omar, second place in the state in literature. 7th grade Sarah Ali, third place in the district honors in literature. 7th grade Nadia Nasser and Fatima Al-Tahali tied in third place in the district honors in literature. Woodworth. Congratulations to the 2013 Woodworth football team who were back-to-back city and championships. This was the first time in Woodworth's football history that the team was undefeated and back-to-back winnings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being
Good
here.
job.
Acknowledgement of donations.
No donations and no other.
Special reports. Sale of bonds ratifying resolution. Mr. Brian Whiston, Mr. Samuel Barna.
And we also have Matt Heiser here, from our law firm, who helped put together the process, give you an update on the sales of the bonds It'll allow us to do the $76 million in construction projects.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to report that the school district sold the bonds that you authorized by resolution back on December 9th. The bond sale was conducted on January 14th, and the bonds sold into a very competitive market. Interest rates were better than what was projected by the school district's financial advisory firm, which allowed the district to achieve an interest cost for the bond issue that was approximately $460,000 less than what was estimated before the bond election. So what that will do is allow the school district to levy fewer mills than was originally anticipated on the taxpayers of the community, and still enjoy all the same improvements that the voters approved back in the election in November. The resolution that you have before you tonight for your consideration does a couple of things. It really ratifies the actions of Mr. Barnes, the Director of Business Services, in accepting the offer from the underwriter, Stiefel Nicholas and Company, to purchase the school district's bonds. That was done by way of a bond purchase agreement that was signed on January 15th. And what this resolution does is it briefly describes the terms of the agreement. It also has the forms of the bonds attached as exhibits. The bonds were sold in 2 series, so each bond form is attached as an exhibit, A and B, and then exhibits B1 and B2 provide the maturity schedules and the interest rates that the bonds were sold at. The average interest rate for the bond issue in its combined form was 4.1% or thereabouts, so very aggressive rate. And then the final item attached to the resolution as Exhibit C is the application for final qualification of bonds with the Michigan School Bond Loan Program. And that applies to the Series A bonds, and that will be filed with the Department of Treasury so that we receive their qualification before we close the bond issue on February 13th. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
Sure. Mr. Guido?
Roughly with the 400 and some odd thousand and less cost to the district, what does that shake out to in terms of the millage?
Of the millage rate?
Yeah.
I actually pulled the proposal this afternoon, and by that I mean the bonding proposal, and the average millage rate that was provided in the bonding proposal that was approved by the voters was 2.42 mils. And again, this is just an average, not necessarily the first year, but over the life of the combined bond issue, the average millage is 1.36 mils. So the average, from an average millage standpoint, is a significant drop. So very good news for the community. Yeah. Okay.
Very good. Trustee Lane?
I would just like to thank you for your work over the years on our bonds. We've changed counsel in other areas where we've been unhappy, but your work has always been something that we've been really pleased with, so I would like to thank you personally.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. I really appreciate that. I enjoy working with you all, and I'm glad we continue to have the opportunity to do it.
It's been a long time.
It has been a long time. I think you are actually my longest client, so.
I've
Thank
never
you.
seen him turn red before, so this is good.
I don't think I've ever gotten praise at a board meeting. I've never gotten in trouble, but it's a very nice comment.
Are you scared now?
So thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. I am right.
Next item?
Next item?
Advanced Ed Focus and Priority Schools, Mr. Brian Whiston, Dr. Gail Shankman, Dr. Jill Chokel, and Ms. Kathleen McBroom.
And I think Kathleen McBroom is going to come forward and give us a report on our advanced ed status and how that impacts focus and priority schools.
Yes, good evening, everyone. If you remember, just about a year ago, we were all getting ready for it was our 5-year renewal of our, systems accreditation status through North Central. And hopefully you remember that we had an on-site visit in March. And thanks to the hard work of all of our teachers and administrators and the support of our parents, the visit went very well, and as a result, at the national meeting in June, we were awarded 5-year accreditation through the North Central Association. And back in November, Mr. Whiston and I attended the annual School Improvement Conference, and at that time, we were awarded with the official plaque telling us our district accreditation quality achievement award was indeed granted and is good through June of 2018. So at this time, I'd like to present it to President Barry.
There you go. Great, thank you very much. I'm actually going to pass it down to Superintendent Whiston.
Yep. Hold on, Jeff.
And on behalf of Dearborn Public Schools, in recognition and appreciation for service and leadership in the advanced accreditation process to improve the quality of the school district and schools, and on behalf of the 19,000 plus students and teachers and the whole district, I want to present you with this plaque too.
Oh, dear.
Kathleen certainly led us through this very
Thank you.
difficult and time-consuming process that does improve our district, but it is a lot of work, and we want to recognize you.
Thank you.
Okay. David, can you help me get my PowerPoint up here? Okay, back to the business at hand. Thank you, this is really nice.
You know, more than just improving our district, it does improve our district, but it's also like a good housekeeping seal. It really, without accreditation, you're really in a bind. I mean, it really is a measure, it's a standard of achievement, so it's very important for us. If you're a hospital, for example, you really don't function without accreditation. Accreditation is just very important, so it's a nice marker for us.
I think it allows us to be self-aware too. Look at our practices, you know, examine what we're doing that's right, and what we're doing that's wrong, and change.
It's an assessment.
It's a very thorough process, as I can attest to as well. So, but as I said, we're set through the next 5 years. So, what I need to share with you tonight is a quarterly update on our focus and priority schools. And just as a brief reminder, back in August, our 2013-2014 of focus and priority schools were identified through the top to bottom list of the Michigan Department of Education. And we have 8 focus schools: Dearborn High, Salina Intermediate, and Woodworth, and then Hague, Howe, Nowlin, William Ford, and I always forget one, Laurie Elementary School. And then, of course, Etzel Ford is our priority school. And Hague and Laurie Elementary are in their second year of focus designation. And because of these designations through the Michigan Department of Education, the Michigan legislature has put into effect a series of requirements that are part of the official waiver to the No Child Left Behind legislation that exists. And there's 4 components. First one consists of quarterly updates to the board, hence my being here tonight. Second is that there is a need for us to work with district facilitators provided to us by the Michigan Department of Ed. The third requirement is that we file various online reports documenting the changes that we're implementing in an attempt to address our priority and focus designations. And then, of course, we need to monitor student progress to see what kinds of changes implementing the changes are bringing about to get us out of this status. First of all, in the quarterly reports, the first quarterly report I provided to the board through the series of board briefs, it was primarily a summary of what the schools were doing to identify those kids who fell into the bottom 30%. Focus school designations are based on the achievement gaps between the top 30% and the bottom 30% of the kids in the building. The middle school and the elementary schools also talked about what they were doing to prepare for MEP testing. Now, granted, they only had about 7 weeks from being named focus schools until the actual testing took place, but that was enough time to implement some after-school programs and some very targeted interventions, hoping to reach the kids who are farthest away from reaching the standards. They also worked on motivation and communicating to the parents and kids the importance of the test, that this is indeed high-stakes testing, and that try to get the parents to participate by making sure the kids got good sleep, good breakfast, things like that. And again, that the kids really took the time and put forth their best efforts on the testing. Second quarter, I'm here tonight to go through the requirements, that's part of the official requirements. Third report will be probably sometime in April or May. Hopefully by that time we'll have some actual student data that'll be disaggregated that we'll be able to share to you to show hopefully the progress that we are making. Then there'll be a final quarterly report at the very end, probably in August, which will be a summation of our activity and our movement this year, and will probably be the introduction of our 2014-2015 cohort of focus and priority schools, because these status will change every year when the state brings out their updated top-to-bottom list. Excuse me. As far as the second component, our district facilitators, we're fortunate to be working with two individuals. One is Dr. Karen White. She is provided to us through Michigan State University, and Dr. White is a retired administrator from the Detroit Public Schools. She was an elementary principal, and she works primarily with our focus schools. And then Dr. White and Ms. Marquita Hall, who is provided to us by Wayne County RESA, works primarily with just our priority school. And I think we're really fortunate to have both of these people, both for their expertise and because they're very willing to meet our schools where they are and where their individual points of need are. And both of these individuals are very hands-on participants. They work with me at central office, but they also go out and visit the schools. And Dr. White especially has gone to all of the focus schools. She's made presentations to the staff, and in some instances has talked to parents and helps the school make sure that they're meeting all the mandates and requirements of these designations. The third component are a series of online reports. And these are put online through the Advanced Ed reporting portal. And the focus schools had to complete focus schools diagnostics that were due on November the 25th. They had two parts to them. The first part were learning and teaching priorities. Each school had to identify 2 or 3 very focused, intentional practices that they were going to implement to bring about changes. And then the second part was they had to document the data that they were looking at that they used to choose the different priorities that they established. And I could have put each of the 8 focus schools and gone through and listed what each school was doing, but I thought instead it might be helpful to kind of group the strategies together so you could get a flavor for what the overall interventions are that are going on across all of the focus schools. And first, 7 out of the 8 schools have identified reading, writing, and literacy as one of their learning components. And of course, that's not the reason there's 7 schools and not 8 is because Howe School specifically is a focus school because of their math achievement. And so they've identified 3 separate learning priorities that focus in specifically on math. Okay, if you look at the sorts of things they're doing, it's nothing really new or earth-shattering. There's SIAP, there's Daily 5, there's language and literacy. These are all of the best practices, innovations that we already had in place for these schools. But what they're doing is because they're focus schools, they've increased the urgency. They've moved up the timetables. They're going about implementing these with greater fidelity, attempting to get the schools in better shape to implement these best practices. Differentiated instruction is another district-wide, and that's a very broad category, of course, but 5 schools specifically have teaching and learning priorities on some aspect of differentiated instruction, whether it's increased formative assessment or individual grouping, leveled readers, so on and so forth. 4 schools have identified math as their main areas of intervention. 3 schools are dealing with stakeholder relationships, primarily better relationships between teachers and students, so that teachers are better able to meet the individual learning needs of the students. And then there are a variety of other priorities as well, which I can provide for you if you want a list of. As far as the supporting data, everyone, of course, automatically assumes that they're looking at the student achievement data, and of course they are, but they look at other forms of data as well. They look at demographic data, they're monitoring the membership and the changing numbers of students in their subgroups, their economically disadvantaged subgroups, their students with disability subgroups, their English language learners. They're looking at transiency rates and also just to see what's going on in the building. They look at perception data, they look at survey results, and not just the major surveys we did last year as part of the accreditation process, but they look at the response to bullying, anti-bullying behavior statistics and things like that. Anything that could be influencing the academic performance of the kids in the building. They also look at process data as far as scheduling. They look at attendance rates, tardies, behavior infractions, any aspect that could be influencing, again, what the test scores in the building. The diagnostics, as I told you, they're filed online through Advanced Ed. The expectation is that these learning priorities will be folded into the school's existing school improvement plans, and that the school Title I budgets will support the implementation of these priorities through such things as professional development or buying any materials that might be necessary for the implementation. The Priority School Online Report is a whole other category. It's a very extensive report. It has 4 major components: an executive summary, which summarizes the school and the environment and the history of the school. There are a series of priority school assurances and operational flexibility assurances. And these are basically statements where we confirm that the school does have the autonomy to make changes, to implement a turnaround plan, that it has the support of central office, that it has the support of the school board, and that the stakeholders, the parents and the students and the staff, have been informed of what the priority status means and what it's going to take to move them out of this status. Then there's a whole other section called the Transformation Redesign Diagnostic, which is a monster report. It has 6 subsections, and it looks at everything from the reform team personnel, not just the individuals involved, but their levels of expertise and why they were chosen to work with the priority school, going all the way through increased learning time and a number of other components. The entire report comes in at just under 50 pages, and I would be happy to share that with you. It is posted and online. And for their ETSO 4 teaching and learning priorities, again, they had to identify 3 main initiatives that they were going to introduce. And their 3 are to implement the Common Core through differentiated instruction, improve reading and writing across the content areas, and provide sustained and embedded professional development to change science and math instructional practices. Of course, there's a great deal of overlap between these areas. Obviously, there's professional development that's entailed in reading and writing across the content areas, but these are the 3 priorities that ETSO Ford, based on data analysis, believes will move them out of priority status. And unlike the focus school diagnostic, this turnaround plan that was submitted to MD had to be officially reviewed and approved, which luckily when it was submitted November the 25th, it was approved on the first go-around. And now this will become its guiding document. This takes the place of its school improvement plan. These are the measures that ETSO Ford will be held for the next 4 years to determine if it's going to be moved off of the priority list. It's also going to dictate the 20% set aside of Title I district funds that will be used to support the priority school initiatives, and the 10% of the ETSO Ford budget itself. So this is the document that will guide us the next 4 years. Okay. The final component was to monitor the student progress, and for the focus schools, they will be very, very carefully looking at the the MEP data as it comes out, disaggregated, to see how the bottom 30% are doing. Hopefully, to see some growth there. That's not the only thing they'll look at. They'll also be looking at common assessments. They'll be looking at classroom assessments to encourage and make sure that all the kids are moving forward. As far as ETSO Ford, they back on November the 19th. They did a replication of the MME testing scenario day. They did a supplemental testing day where they set up the day just like a regular MME, with the scheduling, the timing of the tests. The kids were organized in the time of groups. It was the testing environment that they would have. They followed the schedule. They put forth the motivation. They encouraged the kids to do their best. And this was to give them additional data to see how the kids were doing. And they have gotten the results back, and the results have been very positive. I don't want to steal ETSO Ford's thunder because they are coming to give you their own presentation on February 24th, but I can tell you that there was growth. Students showed growth in 11 out of the 12 tested areas, and more importantly, the 11th graders showed incrementally more growth than the 9th or the 10th graders, which would indicate, hopefully, that the 11th graders really are taking the testing very seriously, and hopefully this forebodes good things for the actual MME testing, which will be coming up in March. And then finally, as I said, for the rest of the reports, ETSO Ford is coming to report to you on February the 24th. There will be the third quarter interim report coming up, and then again the summary at the end. And I would be happy to entertain any questions at this time.
Any questions?
Excellent report.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
February 24th.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Action items, special consideration of an action item. Are there any agenda items on this agenda which board members or the superintendent wish to discuss and vote on separately? If so, I will exclude them from the motion.
Sam, is
Tax
there-
resolution.
does the tax resolution need a separate roll call?
Yeah. Number 6.
And we're good then on 1 through 5? With the there are supplements also to the 1 through 5. Okay, move that action items numbered 1 through 5 be approved as recommended in this agenda.
Support.
We have a motion and support. If there is no objection, the motion will be adopted. Next item, please.
Summary of agenda action items. Number 1 was approval of warrants, which were items for payment by the district and have been reviewed by the administration. Number 2 through 5, approval of non-instructional and instructional personnel items for P12. And then number 6, resolution ratifying the sale of the 2014 building and site bonds, Board Report 1392. Recommended action, move that the board ratify and affirm acceptance of the offer of sale of the 2014 building and site bonds, Series A and Series B, as per Board Report 1392.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Any questions? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Guido?
Yes.
Trustee Lane?
Yes.
Trustee Shellis, yes. Trustee Schoolmaster?
Yes.
Trustee Adams?
Yes.
President Barry?
Yes. Next item, please.
Discussion items. First, review budget 2013-2014, Board Report 1391, Mr. Brian Whiston, Mr. Samuel Barna.
Mr. Barna will come up and give you his presentation on the amended budget.
Good evening again, and thank you for your time. We're going to discuss again the amended budget for 2013 and 2014, and I'll keep this brief because, quite frankly, it is good news. Obviously, over the last several years around this time, there have been cut after cut after cut, and due to our enrollment, we are just doing really fantastic. If you turn to the first page of the presentation, you can see that there's student enrollment and hence our revenues from the state are exceeding our original budget projections for 13-14. And so we had budgeted 19,195 pupils, and we actually have 19,450 pupils as of the student count day on October 3rd of 2013. So this increase in student enrollment translates into approximately $2.1 million of additional state aid funding. Page 2 really breaks down this additional funding in terms of the original budget that we actually went over. I'm sorry about that. Thank you very much, David. That we approved back in June of 2013. The original budget was a little over $170 million, and now with the amended budget, we're looking at $178 million and change, which obviously represents a variance of $7.9 million. Now, again, I mentioned to you that $2.1 million of that was due to increased revenue. The difference, which is $5.8 million, is really just simply a pass-through from the state. What they are doing is they're offsetting our MIPSERS increases, which are our retirement plan percentage increases that we are supposed to pay. They're offsetting that with revenue each month. And so that represents for the entire year $5.8 million of revenue, but an equal amount of expenses that are offsetting that revenue. So it is quite frankly a pass-through. Mm-hmm. If we turn to the next page, we have the expenses for 2013-14 amended. And the variance of 2.1 obviously, and along with the 5.8 again, represents that 7.9 million. The $2.1 million of expenses, though, primarily comprises 18.8 FTE teaching staff, both salary and benefits, as well as the reinstatement of the class size stipend. We actually removed the class size stipend last summer due to budget cuts that had to be done between 2012 and 13 and 2013 and 14. And so we removed that, and I'm pleased to say that we were able to put that back due to the increased enrollment and hence increased revenue. As we know, some of our class sizes are a little bit larger in some areas, and so it's good to have that back into the budget. In addition to that, we have a payment to each of the unit budgets at each of the schools for the substitute savings that we experienced last year. Obviously, a lot of our schools that were able to help us out here in administration and basically, use some innovative ways to reduce the amount of staffing for substitute teachers that we normally incur on a yearly basis. Those expenses can be as high as $1.6 million in substitute teaching costs. So due to the fact that we made promises and we are keeping those promises with giving a portion of those savings back to the unit budgets at each of the schools. So that is also within the $2.1 million of expenses as well. Also, we have a small increase in the healthcare payment for the Dearborn Federation of Teachers. There's a cash in lieu payment that actually at a state level was excluded from the calculation in terms of what we were able to pay from a district, and they actually instituted that last year, which means we really do owe the Dearborn Federation of Teachers approximately $133,000. So that is that portion and that component that I'm mentioning here. And then finally, just miscellaneous operating expenditures. As you know, we have had a very cold year, obviously, with school being school being let out for tomorrow, and the last 3 days as well. The last couple of weeks we've had 3 days as well. And so that being said, it's obviously taking a toll on our expenses, in particular our gas expenditures, our natural gas expenditures. So this miscellaneous operating expenditures includes a small increase to our budget to account for the bad weather as well. So if we turn to the next page, we show the complete picture, obviously, for the original 2013 and 14 budget from last summer to the existing. And again, we still estimate that our general fund balance will be $7.4 million, what it currently is as well at this particular time. In terms of what we're watching, I mean, obviously, we're watching our spending and purchasing, and it's my mandate to continue to watch spending, and with the help of the buildings and all district employees, I will continue to keep and monitor and get their assistance in reducing expenditures so that we can end up more positive with our fund balance than what I'm currently mentioning in this presentation. But this will be a challenge with the weather if it continues with the cold, and obviously any surprises with the facilities. Hopefully we can avoid any detrimental emergency repairs and that sort of thing due to the weather. Also keep an eye on the elections coming up later this year, as well as state funding that goes hand in hand with those elections, and obviously any reform proposals that are put forth. Are there any questions? Yes.
Trustee Adams?
Just curiosity, I think you indicated we had an additional unexpected 255 students.
Yes.
Do we have any idea where that came from? That's a significant number.
It is significant. We're seeing, I could be wrong, but from what are the numbers that I was looking at, I see a lot in the middle schools, and obviously in secondary as well at the high schools. That's where I've seen the biggest increases myself, just from looking at it from a number standpoint.
So is it possible they're coming from charters and private schools at that point?
There's a
in the
possibility.
education? I mean, I'm just curious.
I think what really is a great poll, obviously our district is fantastic, but we have so many great programs with the Collegiate Academy, obviously, and all the.
David, this is what, year 21 or 26 in a row that we've grown?
26.
26th year, and we've averaged during that time 1 to 200 students each year.
And this increase represents a 1.3% increase over budget, and I believe the prior year we had just under 1% increase over budget as well. So as Superintendent Whiston is mentioning, these year-over-year increases they're quite frankly, they're a blessing.
But
Pam, I can also tell you that we have a lot less vacant homes in Dearborn compared to the last couple of years. So
I was just wondering if some
That's
of
excellent.
the programs that we've been offering are
Yeah, certainly all-day kindergarten gave us a big jump, and others.
very good. Very good.
Trustee Lane?
Really happy to see an additional 18.8 teachers, for many reasons. But Superintendent Whiston, I'm wondering, having experienced the gamut of class size anywhere from 16, one of my children had up to plus 30, I know that research is not able to, with so many things that go into a teaching-learning relationship, class size has not been able to be singled out as one factor, but most of us who have experienced it believe there's a big difference if you're in a class of 10, 12, 20 versus 30, 40. I heard of a student teacher in Lansing who had 49, which is just unconscionable to me. So my wonder is whether our student-teacher ratio has eked down a little bit with the additional employment. I certainly hope that it will be in the
Certainly at the
future.
elementary level, you can run into any class sizes, but on average, 24-to-1 in elementary. Quite frankly, secondary, we're more in the 30-32 range, and so probably over the next couple of years, that's the area we need to try to concentrate on if we can. But certainly elementary, we've been able to do a good job on average, 24-to-1. You could find 19, you could find 28, 29, but on average, 24-to-1.
Statistically across the district, though, have we gone down, or are we
Yes.
pretty much flat?
No, certainly in elementary, we've gone down.
Trustee Shellis?
Can I ask a question regarding, the secondary? I know that, it's probably been 6 or 7 years now, maybe even longer, that we switched our pull-out special education program to a push-in, where we have co-taught classes. From what I understand, that's been quite successful, especially since we haven't reverted back to the pull-out program versus the push-in. Is this something that we can look towards? I know that there are some subjects that having an extra set of hands in the classroom would be a blessing. I'm sure every class having an extra set of hands in the classroom would be excellent, but perhaps in the interim, are there certain subjects or certain situations where maybe having that same type of learning environment would be useful to the general education and not just the classrooms with special ed?
Yeah, where we have co-teaching is one special ed, one general ed teacher, and we can get you a report. I don't know, is Michael here? Do you know how many co-teaching classrooms we have now in the district? We'll have to get a report. But we can let you know.
But it seems that it has been really
has test
successful
scores,
on
we would
the
say
special
it's-
education, so I would assume
Right.
that it would be equally as successful in the general ed.
Yep, we'll get you a report on that.
Trustee Lane?
So if that model has been successful, one area that most districts have abandoned with the economic stress is services to gifted students. I wonder whether Superintendent Whiston, whether we'll consider in the future a push-in model for co-teaching gifted, or for differentiating further instruction in the future.
Yeah, certainly differentiated instruction is one of our keys, but we are looking right now at options for challenging kids. We had quite a cabinet meeting today on that very topic, and on looking at different models and looking at different ways of doing that. Certainly we want to meet the needs of each child and help each child be more successful, whether they're at the low end, middle, or high end, and we're looking at ways that we can meet each of their needs and working in partnership with the parents. So we are going through that process right now of looking at what we can do more through the RTI process to meet the needs of our high-achieving kids in partnership with our parents. Something we need to do. Look forward to the
I
report.
believe public schools have to serve all students.
Mm-hmm.
And that it does include gifted students, and I don't want our public schools to be viewed only as a refuge for people who can't really excel. Students who can excel belong in public schools, and they are in public schools. So I hope that will continue.
Trustee Guido?
Just a quick question,
Sure.
Sam.
Yes.
It appears, I guess, just from what I see, the additional revenue from this increased student count is washed by expenses.
It is. It is.
Does that mean that the fund balance that you show of 7.4?
It's stagnant from the current level. That's correct.
That's what was predicted, and that's what.
That's
So
correct.
we weren't
That's
able
correct.
to eke out a little bit
Well,
out of the 2.
that certainly is our goal, but
That's
right now, we're
certainly-
not ready to promise that.
Absolutely. As Brian just
Make that
mentioned.
number
I just wanted to bring that point out.
No, that's a fantastic point. My goal is to increase fund balance, but I also need to have a conservative
Hoping you're
stance as
gonna
well. And I'm hoping, I did mention that I was adding to budget for things such as our natural gas supply. That's adding to budget. Obviously, it could come to fruition that we actually have as low of cost as we did last year. But to be conservative, I chose to increase our budget in that category due to the reality that we're currently experiencing. But, obviously, we have several months of the school left to go for the school year, and so therefore, again, my goal is to try to minimize those expenses so that we have a favorable fund balance, more favorable than currently predicted.
I think you already know that this board's position on fund balance. We'll push as hard as we can.
Absolutely.
I think even at the college, Amy's introduced the thought of making it a line item in the budget
Yes.
to strive towards. And, even though that may not be practical here, we still want
To increase our fund balance.
I really,
Because we really, I don't know, in terms of our operating, how many days that 7.4 million.
Not many.
Not many at all.
I mean, we have it in the audit report, I don't remember, it's not much.
So-
Well, and we still have to borrow.
Yes.
we do.
Right.
We still have
9
to
million.
draw on our revolver in order to, meet all of our obligations.
But this year, Sam, we won't have to borrow on that based upon the $76 million, is that correct?
Actually, the $76 million you cannot use for operations. That's
Okay,
strictly,
we will not be able to use
No.
any of that money for
No.
interim financing.
that's correct. We
In the
cannot
past-
use that.
We've
When
done
we-
it
Yeah, in the past, we were
unknowingly.
able to, and I
No.
was
Yeah.
unsure of what the.
There's rules on that.
There
We're
is.
gonna follow those rules.
That's correct. We will
Okay.
follow those rules. That's
Well, I
strictly
know,
for,
You're aggressively following those
Brian
rules, I
doesn't
presume.
look good in orange in prison.
nor does Sam. The fact
Nor
of
does the
the
board.
the fact of the matter is that $76 million is strictly for the bond projects as voted on by the voters of Dearborn.
That's correct, I understand that, but
In past years, other things have occurred, but we're gonna follow the rules.
Trustee Lane?
past years you told us.
We should note this, and I know it was noted in the previous meeting. We're lucky in that I heard recently that we're going to break a record for January for snowfall. But we're only the 13th coldest year on record for actual temperature. And so maybe we'll be okay for utilities, but as far as snowfall, our people are out there and they're plowing. I saw one of the guys with the tractor out there plowing. So we're lucky that whether it snows 2 inches or 4 inches, they still do the same work. But they are doing more this year than previous years.
Trustee Lane, that's very well said, and I want to send a public thank you to our staff as well, again, for doing such a phenomenal job in our operations departments, keeping our schools open, keeping them safe, transportation-wise, and our grounds crews, everyone's doing a fantastic job, so thanks again to everyone. So, any other questions?
Mr. Barner, when you have good news like this, you can have all the time you want. You don't have to make it a quick report.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Board of Education business. Board member committee and organization reports.
Well, at the table, you will find the committee assignments, so the committees will be going to work the next few weeks. I don't think we have anything to report. Okay, next item.
Board member commentary.
Trustee Adams?
I attended the awards luncheon last week in Grand Rapids. The Superintendent's Association and Superintendent Weston received his award, and it was a very, very nice luncheon. A lot of people were extremely complimentary and supportive, and very happy that he did receive the award. I just also wanted to mention that at the same awards luncheon, Jeremy Hughes, Dr. Jeremy Hughes, who's one of our previous superintendents, was inducted into the Superintendent's Hall of Fame. And he's only the second superintendent that's ever been inducted. And so that was quite an honor. And he was there with his family also. So it was wonderful to see him and be able to be there to congratulate him on that honor that he received. And I said, hey, we know how to pick him.
Thank you for sharing
It
that
looks
with
like
us.
the common denominator is if you can work with us as a board, you deserve a special award.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Be nice.
There's some connection there.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
It was a very nice event.
Thank you.
And congratulations to you, Brian. It was, how many appearances are you going to have to make this year? The superintendent from last year
Is it kind
gave
of
a
like the
report.
Miss USA
It's
pageant?
kind of
where
like,
you-
Don't go there. Don't start
exactly.
that.
Don't start that
How
again.
many shades of red can Brian get?
Yeah, my award is I get to go to a lot more meetings and give a lot more speeches.
Yeah, sounds like
Wow.
you will.
Well, imagine
What a
if you
reward.
It's an honor.
It was a very
It's an
nice.
It was a nice evening,
It was
though.
very
Thank you.
nice.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Request for information and/or future agenda items.
You gave me the one on the co-teaching, so we'll add that to the list.
I don't know if I'm looking for a report, but I'm just looking for information.
Yep.
I just want to disclose my position. I have no problem whatsoever once we hire from outside the city or outside the district for teachers in the classroom or administrators. But I am aware that there's a program out there for inspiring teachers to be administrators.
Yep.
I'd like some information on that because I know we have some unhappy campers. These teachers spend $60,000, $70,000, and most of the times that's in loans. And they start applying for these positions, and sometimes they're turned away more than once. So we need to get to them. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe not everybody. I know you can't tell them, don't come into the program, but also, we have, okay, let me put it out there. I mean, we have sometimes the people step up to the plate in the administration, and they kind of get stuck in a position, and I think we need to have that hard discussion with them, maybe, because they did, some of our assistant principals automatically feel that they're owed principal position. I know we have contracts to follow, I respect that. At the same time, let's keep an eye on that, please. But I would like some information on that
Yep.
program, how many.
We're excited about the offerings that we do have, and we'll
Yeah,
share
and it's a
that
great
with-
program.
Yep.
But, yeah, I mean, maybe we need to adjust or fix or something. Because there are teachers out there that I hear some great things about, and I approach them and say, hey, would you ever consider? And I do get some negative remarks. We do have some great teachers out there that I would like to come forward. So that's looking for some information on that.
Sure.
Next item?
My apologies, I missed item number 9. Correspondence, acknowledgement of correspondence, and I know that we have received several correspondence in the last week or so regarding the movement of a program in a building.
Via email or
Yep.
something.
Okay.
The what, which program?
The Montessori program.
Moving the campuses.
Yeah, we received several emails.
Well, and
that were
I just want
forwarded
to say that we received several emails after the administration had responded, and the emails that we received totally ignored the response that Dr. Shankman had very eloquently addressed every single one of the issues that were in that email, the original ones that we received, and then we continued to get emails addressing the same issues that had been responded to. And while I know that there's always disagreement in philosophy, I mean, at least acknowledging that, there were comments made that addressed some of the issues. I think that was kind of unfair.
We did put together a Q&A document that has the questions and answers we've been providing, so.
Yeah, well, and I think it was very well put together. The issues were addressed one at a time, and I thought that the responses were really good, and it should have at least been acknowledged that those responses, and if you still disagree with the response, it's fine, but to go back to the original point seemed redundant to me.
Appreciate that.
Thank you for catching that.
Oh, I just wanted also to mention that I received correspondence from somebody that was concerned that they weren't going to be able to graduate because they hadn't fulfilled their requirements as an aide. And I brought that to Dr. Shankman's attention, who brought it to Judy McConaughey's attention, and once again, I applaud the school district for being so responsive.
It has been resolved.
And it has been resolved. And it could have been really a difficult situation because the individual was scheduled to graduate the next day, and Henry Ford,
Adult ed graduate.
yes, and a program that we had in place with Henry Ford refused to allow individuals because of a transfer of somebody. And so we had placement for this person, but they refused to allow her to, have this placement. And so it was a real difficult situation that was handled with aplomb by Dr. Shankman and Ms. McConaughey.
I just was curious, talking about the move to campuses. Where does that decision stand? Are we close to getting a recommendation on it?
Yep, we did meet with the parents for a third time, and there's 3 questions that they came up with that I still need answers to. And we are meeting with the architects tomorrow, and we'll have those answers shortly. So you should expect a recommendation from me in the very near future, in the next week or so.
Are you talking about building changes, or, changes to the plans that we?
Things like, right now there's an elevator, can we put a ramp? Can we put a wall at a certain location? Those kinds of things.
Okay.
That we're meeting with the architect to make sure.
I just want to make sure, because, some of the questions or some of the concerns that were brought up, such as, the classrooms don't have a bathroom facilities in the rooms, which, that's a lovely thing to have, but I don't want to rework all the classrooms to put
cannot do
bathrooms
that.
in there when
No.
we have hundreds of elementary classrooms that don't have
Yeah,
bathrooms
no,
in them.
we're not doing that.
Okay,
But we do
I just
have to
wanted to make
remodel
sure that we
bathrooms.
weren't, if the changes that we're gonna have to make to accommodate some parents are gonna require
We have a
funding,
budget. We
I
have a
would
budget. We have to live
appreciate
within it.
the board being asked about the changes prior to.
Yeah, the board will have to approve any of the projects. Yeah. But so far, the changes that we have recommended are not dollar issues.
Okay,
Or minor, putting up a wall or
Right.
something, yeah.
okay.
Trustee
But
Lane?
you will get that.
Since we're mentioning adult and community ed, I am prompted to recall that I attended with Dr.
You did.
Shankman and with yourself the adult ed graduation in January. So I would like to congratulate the students who graduated. Dr. Shankman did inform us of some of the stories of adversity that a lot of those students wrote their stories, the success, having failed and having overcome a lot of adversity. It's always very moving to go to those ceremonies. It's really terrific to see. I saw a student that I knew who I had no idea she was in that program, but it's always nice to see what other offerings we have in the district, to learn about what experiences students have, and remind myself that we have to congratulate our January graduates for certificates and for adult ed. Every one of those students has another potential career, and then the ones that graduated, in my recollection, and I know President Berry, you remember this as well, remember a grandparent coming up and saying, that graduation saved my granddaughter from being on the streets. And it almost brings me to tears to remember that. It does bring me to tears to remember that grandparent. So it's a great thing. It's first class of 2014 graduating, so it was really a wonderful event as usual. So congratulations to all of those students.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, those stories are what it's all about. Just seeing the pride on those parents' faces and the stories. So yes, congratulations. Next item.
How do I follow that? Superintendent's reports.
None.
Future meeting dates. Monday, February 10th, 2014, P12 Board of Education meeting, 7 p.m. at the Administrative Service Center in the Frank Franchi Boardroom. Monday, February 17th, 2014, HFCC meeting, 7 p.m. at the Andrew Mazzaro Service and Conference Center in the Roseno Boardroom, Henry Ford Community College. Monday, February 24th, 2014, P12 Board of Education meeting, 7 p.m. at the Administrative Service Center in the Frank Franchi Boardroom. Monday, March 10th, 2014, P12 Board of Education meeting, 7 p.m. at the Administrative Service Center in the Frank Franchi Boardroom.
We are adjourned.